Earlier this month, the Southern Baptist Convention, the nation's largest Protestant denomination, learned it is under investigation by the Biden administration over claims of sexual harassment and abuse. You may remember that earlier this year, the SBC released a third-party report examining how its leadership handled sexual abuse allegations between 2000 and 2021. The results were indeed troubling, but do they warrant a federal investigation? Joining me to discuss this is John Daukas. He's the former acting assistant attorney general for civil rights at the U.S. Department of Justice under Attorney General Bill Barr. John, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Thanks for having me.
We are glad to have you because a lot of us don't understand the context in which this is happening. DOJ investigations seem bad. We're not familiar with what is customary. What's your reaction to the news that the Department of Justice is investigating the Southern Baptist Convention?
Well, Joseph, it's very unusual, very unusual. Generally, sexual abuse claims are prosecuted and investigated at the state level. I think it's important to understand that the Department of Justice has limited jurisdiction. For example, there's no nationwide criminal offense of murder, no federal offense of murder, no federal offense of rape, no federal offense of child abuse or sexual abuse. There has to be a specific statute that authorizes the Department of Justice to conduct an investigation. That is, the Department of Justice just can't run around the country and investigate any type of wrongdoing. Part of that is to make sure that there is no bias in the way that the law is enforced in this country. And that's why what's called a predicate is required, a statute that allows this type of investigation.
And just to be clear, when you say there's no federal statute regarding rape or murder, that's not to say it's legal anywhere, but those are state law matters. And they are prosecuted at the local level, not necessarily the federal level in most cases. Now, this isn't totally unprecedented because we have seen investigations into the Catholic Church, abuse scandals there. The Department of Justice did get involved. Is this very different than that?
So, Joseph, the case you're talking about was an investigation that happened in Pennsylvania, which was fairly short-lived, and that was extremely unusual as well. That was an investigation into the Catholic Church, and again, allegations of sexual abuse. This case is different in that the Southern Baptist Convention, unlike the Catholic Church, does not ordain ministers or hire or fire people. And I guess the important point to stress here is that investigation in Pennsylvania was extremely unusual, and a number of people were troubled by it as well.
And we understand that you're not inside people's minds, but what do you think would be the motivation for the Department of Justice to launch its own investigation into a situation that all parties acknowledge is troubling?
Well, Joseph, if I were with the Southern Baptist Convention, I would ask the Department of Justice what the basis was, the legal basis was for their investigation, because again, this is what has been handled, frankly, throughout the country for the last 3 or 4 decades at the state and local level. Again, sexual abuse of minors, which is absolutely a terrible thing. But again, it's subject to state law. Congress has not, the federal government has not, and Congress has not passed a federal law that criminalizes sexual abuse of minors. There are laws, federal laws prohibiting transporting minors across states for sexual purposes and other specific laws, but that doesn't seem to be what's going on here now. And Joseph, perhaps to more directly answer your question, again, I hate to try to judge someone's motivation, so I would want to know what the Department of Justice basis is. But it's very troubling in the context we have here, where we had a Department of Justice and an FBI that went in and raided a former president's private home. That's something that I never thought I'd see in my lifetime, the national police being called out to raid the opposition party's leader's home. We also have, again, unprecedented situation where the Department of Justice intended to prosecute and pursue the parents of school children and called them domestic terrorists because they were complaining at school board meetings about the way their children were being taught and were being treated. That's unprecedented. And you may have seen recently that the White House was meeting with leaders of social media and trying to get them to censor by name different speakers, different journalists. So there's an awful lot of apparent politicization of the Department of Justice, which is extremely troubling.
And that is important context in all of this. And there is this growing cynicism among many in the general public that the Department of Justice and the FBI are not simply operating on behalf of justice, but there's kind of a political motivation, a political purpose for so much of the work that they are doing. When you look at this situation, customarily, how would something like this have been handled by law enforcement?
Customarily, this situation would be left to the state prosecutors, state law enforcement. That's the way it was done with the Catholic Church all around the country, with the one exception you mentioned. That's what was done in Boston and Buffalo, throughout the entire United States. That's what one would expect to see. Unfortunately, there's sexual abuse in many different organizations. In public schools, far more cases than we're seeing in religious institutions. In school sports, in scouting organizations, those all have been handled at by local prosecutors, which is where the responsibility lies here. And Joseph, there's a specific federal policy called the Pettit policy, and the implication of that is that generally the federal government, when a state has jurisdiction and a state is investigating or prosecuting crimes, the federal government will not bring its own indictments until the state has taken action, unless certain exceptions are met.
John Daukas, in about 30 seconds, how do you expect this to be resolved?
I expect that the Southern Baptist Council, I would expect, will not be found to have committed federal crimes of the type that would give jurisdiction to the federal government. So it'll be interesting, very interesting to see how the Department of Justice responds to this. And I would add that, Bill Barr and Jeff Sessions came in to try to depoliticize the Department of Justice after Obama, and this seems to be going the wrong way.
John, we are out of time, but thanks for being with us today.
Thank you very much.